Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 6th episode in which, rather than Hinata's father, a young Uzumaki Naruto foils Kumo's kidnapping attempt. However, he receives a severe wound in the process, jeopardizing his shinobi career. That is, if not for a certain fox stepping in and offering Naruto the Hokage to be a reward for his heroism. Witness Naruto's newfound power and unique perspective. This story comes from Story Seeker 7. Make certain to support him, her. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Doton, Multi-Rock Spear no Jutsu. Sarah weaved out of the way of the rocky projectiles that would have pierced through her. She closed in on her opponent, a tall man a few years older than her. Jukenho, Hak Rokujian Sho. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. Her opponent stumbled back as several of his tenketsu were shut off. You bitch! The man shouted, recovering. He went through a series of hand signs. What the? He said with a look of surprise. Why can't I? He never got to finish his question, as Sarah took advantage of his distracted state. On chakra-enhanced strike to the throat, and the man was down. Sarah, watch out! A voice warned her. Sarah spun around, feeling the heat of a fireball that would have burnt her. She threw a hail of kunai in the direction of her attacker. 2 of them found their mark in the man's left arm. The man cursed and tried to go through a series of hand signs. The man was stopped when a 3rd kunai lodged itself in his throat, courtesy of her partner. How are you holding up? Kurenai said. Just fine. Sarah responded, fighting off another opponent. She, Kurenai, and Enko had been dispatched on a mission to eliminate a group of rogue shinobi that set up shop in Tea Country. Not missing Nin, as these men held no affiliation to any known hidden village. These days, rogue shinobi was a rarity. Most shinobi came from one of the hidden villages or swore loyalty to a daimyo. For most, they were considered little better than missing Nin. Though the difference mattered little for Sarah, she had a mission to do, and she was going to carry it out. For a brank mission, I thought this would be tougher. She said, keeping her disappointment to herself. This was the first brank she had in years, and she had looked forward to testing herself. She figured going up against a group of rogue shinobi like this would be an effective way of gauging her skills. But so far, most of the enemies they had faced only demonstrated genin-level ability. A couple came close to being chunin but failed to impress her. The only difficult thing about the fight was their opponents had numbers. This mission feels more appreciated for a team of chunin or a veteran genin team with their jonin sensei. Not a jonin, tokubetsu jonin, and a chunin. She explained. Kurenai nodded behind her. I agree with you. She said, place 2 men under a genjutsu that had the 2 fighting each other. But our client is a rich man and paid for a brank mission and asked for at least 1 jonin to handle these rogue shinobi. She throws a kunai into the head of the man that won the fight. Hence why we're here, Sarah said, blocking a palm strike and delivering her own to her attacker's chest. I imagine Enko is feeling rather disappointed. Like you? Kurenai said. Sarah knocked out another rogue shinobi. Perhaps just a little. She responded. I was looking forward to testing my abilities. Maybe even come back with a good story for Naruto. That boy is always bugging me about my missions. Through her Byakugan, she could see her friend smiling. I imagine that there's not much to tell when it comes to D and cranks. She ducked out of the way of a sword swing and kicked her attacker in the back. The man stumbled in the direction of Sarah. She was ready for him and delivered several juken strikes to his chest. I suppose it's better than nothing. She said. You could always exaggerate some of the details. Kurenai suggested. Say we faced 100 jonin level opponents. Sarah rolled her eyes. Embellishing the details of a mission is hardly appropriate for a shinobi of Konoha. Especially for one like myself coming from the Hyuga clan. Then a small smile formed on her lips. Besides, there were easily 1,000 here. Kurenai huffed out a laugh. Speaking of Anko, where is she? On cue, both Kunoichi heard a blood-curdling scream. What do you want to bet that she just removed some poor guy's manhood, and snakes were involved? Knowing her, it was a venomous snake. Sarah said, trying to keep her expiration out of her voice. She briefly turned her head to face her only sane friend in the area. How are you friends with that crazy woman? Kurenai knocked out a rogue shinobi with a swift kick to the head. Last I checked, she's your friend too. Which has me seriously questioning my taste in friends. Sarah responded, then she noticed a familiar figure approaching them at high speed. Speak of the devil, and she shall appear. Anko jumped between them and threw something at two shinobi running. This something being a third unconscious shinobi. Both men were sent back by the impact of their comrade. Anko smiled sadistically, and her arms shot out, transforming into a pair of snakeheads. The snakes bit into the two men's necks, and moments later, they were out cold. Anko's arms turned back and returned to their normal length. Must you always make such entrances? Sarah asked the purple-haired Kunoichi. Anko laughed. Of course. She said with an almost snake-like grin. A beautiful and sexy woman like myself has got to always impress. Keeps the men from losing interest. One of the shinobi charged at Anko. Only to miss and have a snake bit into the back of his head. He screams as he falls to the ground, spasming. See, these guys can't keep their hands off of me. Sarah rolled her eyes. Just focus on the mission. She said. Anko, were you able to find out who and where the leader is? Kurenai asked. Anko nodded. Sure, did. One of the gentlemen here was kind enough to tell me. After a bit of persuasion. The smile she had was enough to tell what she meant by persuasion. He's a man in his 40s wearing a headband with the word Kage carved into it. Fancies himself the leader of a new village. This time Sarah did not bother to hide her eye roll. If the shinobi under his command are any indication, he's not a very good leader or shinobi. She said, shutting off the tenketsu of an attacker. It doesn't matter. Kurenai said. Anko, where is this man? Anko pointed up at a ridge. He should be in a hut up that ridge. Kurenai looked to Sarah. Sarah, can you see him? Without giving a response, Sarah focused her vision on where Anko was pointing. She found the hut Anko mentioned. Looking more closely, she showed at a single figure, sitting down. Found him. She reported. What's he doing? Kurenai asked. He's just sitting there. Doing nothing. What? Anko asked, sliding down and slicing at the tendons of her opponent. A quick thrust to the back of the head ended the man's life. Can't that guy hear his subordinates dying out here? Maybe he's a heavy sleeper. Kurenai supplied. Sarah shook her head. No, he's awake. He just ignoring what's happening down here. Some leader. Anko commented. Can you tell how strong he is? From what I can judge, he has the largest chakra pool of all the rogue shinobi here. I say around the size of a mid-chunin. That would still be smaller than her own chakra pool, which was closer to what Jonin had. Though she knew better to judge the man purely on how much chakra he had. For all, she knew he had the skill and control needed to match a Jonin. Sarah, me, and Anko are going to handle the rest of these guys. Kurenai explained. Go after the leader and see if you can apprehend him. We'll join you as soon as we finish here. Remember, our client would prefer it if we took him alive. Sarah looked around the battle, noting that the enemy's numbers had thinned considerably. Even if the leader proved to be stronger than her, she wouldn't have to fight him alone for long. "On it," she said, leaping away from her teammates. It took about a minute to get up the ridge, being slowed down by a couple of rogue shinobi, whom she was quick to dispatch. She arrived at the hut where the leader was. Getting into a gentle fist stance, she called out to its occupant. "Come out." The figure ignored her for a moment. He stood up and walked out of the hut. Sarah briefly turned her Byakugan off, so she could get a better look at the man. He's a tall, muscular man in his 40s and, as Enko said, wore a headband with Kage carved into it. Rather crudely, Sarah might add. The man had a look of interest on his face before it morphed into disappointment. "Did they seriously send a woman after me?" he sneered. "From all the commotion I heard, I thought my men were facing a crack team of shinobi. Not some little girl and her friends. Tell me, is there a real shinobi in your group? Or do I have to discipline my men for being beaten by a bunch of women?" Sarah held back snare. "I am Hyuga Sarah, a chunin from Konoha. Women or not, my teammates and I will be better shinobi than you will ever hope to be." She activated her Byakugan. "Now, I will only ask you this once. Our client would prefer that you be alive when we bring you in. Surrender now, and your life will be spared. Fight me, and I cannot guarantee that you will live." The man smirked at her. "A Hyuga, eh?" he said slowly. "Never fought one of your kind before. I hear your clan is supposed to produce some of the deadliest taijutsu specialists in the elemental nations." He got into a taijutsu stance. "I always wanted to test my skills against a Hyuga. Too bad they sent a woman after me. But I suppose you will have to do." What kind of arrogant fool was she facing? Was he seriously considering facing a Hyuga in taijutsu? Sarah took a breath to calm her anger. She then smiled. She would take this as an opportunity to educate the man not to underestimate a Hyuga or a woman. "Do you really intend to face the Jukin in battle? Such arrogance is fated to lead you to your fall." The wind blows past them as the two opponents wait for the other to make the first move. The rogue shinobi leader was the first to act. He charged at Sarah and threw out a punch at her. She swiftly evades the attack and deflects a second attack with a palm strike. For the next few seconds, Sarah spends the time avoiding and deflecting her opponent's attacks. At the same time, she was evaluating the skill of her opponent. Admittedly, the man was not a bad fighter. His strikes were quick, powerful, and calculated. All signs pointed towards him being a taijutsu specialist, unlike his subordinates, were sloppy and wasted too much energy in a single attack. It was clear to Sarah that this man had seen his fair share of fights. A normal chunin would struggle against him. Too bad he was facing a Hyuga and one of the better ones at that. Sarah found the opening she was looking for and delivered several precise strikes to the man's right arm, closing off several tenketsu. The man's eyes widened as he lost the ability to channel chakra in that arm. Anger flashed into his eyes as he tried to strike Sarah with a kick. She grabbed the leg by its foot and closed off tenketsu with a series of jukin strikes. She let go, and the man leaped back. "I suggest that you surrender now. I have closed off the majority of the tenketsu in your right arm and left leg. Your ability to channel chakra into them has been severely hampered." The man glared at her. "I don't need chakra to beat a little girl like you." He charged at Sarah. Sarah sighed to herself. This was not the mission she had envisioned for herself. With the man's ability to use chakra disrupted, he couldn't move as fast as before. The young Hyuga woman easily sidestepped the man's attack and delivered a jukin strike to the back of his head. Her opponents fell to the ground, sliding to a stop. He was still alive but out cold. Sarah took a breath to calm down and deactivated her Byakugan. She walked over to her downed opponent, closed off more of his tenketsu. After that, she began to tie the man up. By the time she was done, Kurenai and Anko were running towards her. Looks like you got things under control. Kurenai. Comments coming to a stop. Did he prove to be a handful? Not much. Sarah said, checking the man's bindings, making sure they were secure. The man was a taijutsu specialist, not a bad one. Kurenai smiled. Unfortunate for him, he was facing a hyuga. Sarah nodded. He was also a sexist pig. Called all of us little girls. A frown appeared on Kurenai's face. Really? She said in an even voice. I suppose that was a good thing. It caused him to underestimate you. Anko had a smirk on her lips. I can't wait to see the look on his face when he wakes up and realizes that a little girl beat him. Hey, Kurenai, you think I could have a go at him? Really drive home the point that we women can be every bit the shinobi that men can be. She had a bloodthirsty glint in her eyes. For once, Sarah thought it was warranted. Kurenai sighed, putting her fingers to her head. No, Anko-san. We need this man to be one piece if we are to present him to our client. The snake mistress had a disappointed frown on her features. Oh, come on, Kurenai. Can I at least remove his manhood? While he's awake? The genjutsu mistress of Konoha had a thoughtful look, like she was seriously considering Anko's offer. She shook her head. No. She said firmly. You will do nothing of the sort. We're bringing this man to our client alive and with all of his pieces intact. Fine. Anko pouted. Kurenai shook her head, rubbing her forehead. Come on, the sooner we get this man to our client, the sooner we can get back to Konoha. Anko continued to pout while Sarah nodded at her. What of the rest of the men under his command? She asked the team leader. What has become of them? Most of them are dead or have fled. The rest are unconscious. Kurenai explained. Should we take them with us? Kurenai thought about it for a few moments before shaking her head. No, we'll leave them here. We'll tie them up, and I'll put them under a genjutsu to keep them from leaving. After that, we'll notify the proper authorities to come and pick them up. Sarah nodded. We should try sealing their chakra. That way, they can't escape. You can handle that, Sarasan. Kurenai said. I say we just slit their throats and be done with it. Anko said in a bored tone. Which is why you're not in charge here, Anko-san. Come on, let's get to work. Days later, Konoha Dango stand. Man, these dangos just keep getting better and better. Anko said, almost inhaling her food off the stick. Sarah just stared at the woman as she took in one stick after another and discarded them into an ever-growing pile. Where does she even put that stuff? Sarah asked. It was like watching Naruto eating ramen. Probably the same place where your charge puts his ramen. Kurenai said, seemingly on the same wavelength as the Hyuga woman. They had just gotten out from the Hokage Tower after reporting the completion of their successful mission. Anko had suggested they go out and eat at her favorite dango stand to celebrate. Kurenai had agreed right away, and Sarah had put some thought into it. She decided to go along with her friends. Naruto was likely still in class, and it would be for a while before she would have to pick him up. Not that he needs an escort anymore, the boy could find his own way back to the compound. Speaking of Naruto, Sarah hoped the boy had not gotten into too much trouble while he was gone. Hey, Sarasan. Anko said with a mouth full of food. Don't you have to report to those old sticks in the mud? Sarah raised an eyebrow at her less than sane friend. Sticks in the mud? She questioned, already having an idea of who she was referring to. Anko swallowed her food with a loud gulp. The Hyuga elders. You know those old farts who constantly got sticks stuck up their asses? You shouldn't refer to them like that. Sarah said. They are venerable elders of our clan and should be treated with respect. Enko rolled her eyes. Whatever, she said, taking another swing at her food. But don't you have to report to them right away or something? Sarah shook her head. The elders don't require me to report to them right after a mission. They understand that their shinobi need a moment to rest and to have time to themselves. I will be reporting to them after I have returned to the compound. Truth was, she was hoping to avoid reporting the elders for as long she reasonably could. As much she respected them, reporting to the elder council of the Hyuga clan was a drawn-out process that left her more tired than the mission itself. Personally, she felt her time could be better spent with training or other more productive activities. If the elders wanted to know about her missions, they could just read the reports she submitted to the Hokage. Plus, as Naruto would put it, they were windbags that loved to suck out the life out of everything. That boy was rubbing off her too much. Enko's smirk grew. So little miss, perfect Hyuga isn't as perfect she claims to be? Enko quit pestering Sarasan. Kurenai interjected before things could get out of hand. She'll report to the Hyuga elders when she's ready. Spoil sport. Enko said, getting back to her dango. Sarah rolled her eyes. Thank you, Kurenai-san, she said to the woman with red eyes. Kurenai nodded at her. The conversation fell silent for a while as they ate their food. Occasionally one of them would make a quick comment or, in Enko's case, a quip. I think things are finally starting to settle down, Kurenai said suddenly. What's settling down? Sarah asked, wondering where her friend was going with this. Kurenai looked out at the street behind them. The matter with the Uchiha clan. Now that piqued Sarah's interest, even Enko seemed interested as she slowed down on devouring her favorite food. How so? It had been 4 years ago now when what became known as the Uchiha betrayal occurred. A third of the clan under the leadership of Yashiro Uchiha had turned against the village and their clan. They had attempted to kill the Fugaku, the clan head, and his family in a bid to seize power over the Uchiha clan. Later they would have attempted a coup against Konoha. Their bid for power failed because of Fugaku's quick thinking. Sarah remembered that night well. Hayashi had ordered the clan to be put on high alert in case the traitor Uchiha managed to succeed and launch an attack against the village. Despite the outcome of that night, it had been a scary night for her. She remembered standing outside Naruto's door, so afraid that the Uchiha would attack the Hyuga compound. That they would make their way to her home, and somehow, she would fail to protect her young charge. That was the night when she realized that she viewed the young blonde boy as more than her charge. He was like the little brother she never had. Sarah had grown up as an only child, never knowing what it was like to have siblings. Sure, there were other children in the clan, and they were dear to her heart. But it wasn't the same as having a brother or sister, someone who had a direct blood connection. Being with Naruto taught her that one did not need blood ties to be considered family. A part of her always felt that way, but it wasn't until that night that it fully clicked in her mind. The next morning, she had dotted on the boy in her own special way. What I mean is that I think the villagers are starting to trust the Uchiha again, Kurenai said. I haven't heard as many whisperings against them in the last few months. Now that Sarah thought about it, she hadn't heard the villagers speak much of the Uchiha clan's wrongdoings in a while. I suppose that you're right, she said. It's been 4 years now. I guess that's enough time for feelings to simmer down and for people to move on. If only that were true for other things. Kurenai nodded. Yeah, it probably doesn't hurt that the Uchiha have managed to turn their whole attitude around. Remember when Fugaku-san announced they would be expanding the Uchiha police force? Sarah nodded. About a year after the Uchiha betrayal, Fugaku had announced that they would be allowing non-Uchiha into the police force. Even going as far as to rename the Uchiha police force to the Konoha police force. The Uchiha still dominated the force, but now there were many non-Uchiha in its ranks, including a few Hyuga. And they have been a lot more open with the village since that night. A genuine dialogue had been established between the Uchiha and Konoha. The Uchiha had taken a powerful blow both to its numbers, with a third of their number dead, imprisoned, or on the run, and to its reputation. Still, the signs that they were starting to recover were there. Speaking of Uchiha, Enko said. How are things with your boyfriend? Sarah felt her face heat up. Shursue-kun is not my boyfriend. She responded, her voice just above what normal conversation called for. We're just good friends. Enko's smile grew. Really now? You two seem pretty close for friends. She commented slyly. And what's with the Shursue-kun? Doesn't that sound a bit personal for friends? Sarah felt her face getting hotter and hotter. Shursue-ku, I mean Shursue-san is just a friend. Enko-san, I would ask that you stop with this line of questioning. You're coming close to offending me and, by extension, the Hyuga clan. Enko's smile was now starting to show teeth. Nothing I haven't done before. Most of your clan already dislikes me, so how can I make it any worse? Sarah turned over to Kurenai, seeing that the woman was fighting back a smile of her own. Kurenai-san, please talk some sense into your friend here. Sarasan, Kurenai said, holding back a mirthful laugh. I've been trying to do that for years now. Ever since I've met her. I am no closer to talking sense into her now since then. Yeah, me and sense don't go well together. Enko cackled out. I thought that you would know that by now. Sarah stood up from her seat. I think I'll be reporting to the elders now. Kurenai, could you take care of the bill? Kurenai nodded with a laugh. Of course, I will. Have a good day. She said with a smile. To you as well. Sarah said with a bow. Then she faced Enko, who still had her smirk on. Try not to choke on your dango. Then she left. The next morning Uchiha compound, Sasuke woke up when his alarm went off. Letting out a yawn, he hit the snooze button on the noisy device. Sitting up in his bed, he looked around his room, slowly letting his mind wake up. Once he was fully awake, he threw his covers off and got out of bed. Leaving his room with a fresh set of clothes, Sasuke made his way for the bathroom for a quick wash. About 10 minutes later, he was out of the shower and got dressed after drying off. Before leaving, he looks at himself in the mirror. He was over 11 years old now, the signs of maturity were slowly showing themselves. He was still a kid, but he was a few short years away from adolescence. His face was less rounded before as the baby fat slowly faded, both from age and the intense training his clan and the academy put him through, giving him a more distinct look. Other changes were slowly showing themselves. His shoulders were a bit broader. He noticed his voice was starting to get deeper, and of late, he had become more interested in girls. Not on the same level as most boys around his age did, but he did find himself looking at the girls in his class a bit more. Though none so far had held his interest long enough for then a passing glance. He had yet to hit his growth spurt that he imagined wouldn't happen until he became a teenager. He left the bathroom and went down the stairs. A turn of the corner later, he entered through the door leading to his family's dining room. Food had already been laid out on the table, courtesy of his mother. He sat down at where his food was laid. Good morning, mother. He said to his mother with a warm smile. His mother returned the gesture. Good morning, Sasuke-kun. She said. How is my little duckling doing this morning? Mom. The young Uchiha boy groaned. Stop calling me that. I'm not a little boy anymore. His mother giggled. Ah, but Sasuke, no matter how old you are. You will always be my little duck. Sasuke tried to hide his embarrassment. I'm doing fine, Mom. He answered the previous question, hoping to avoid further embarrassment. Again, his mother giggled. That's good to hear. Don't I get a good morning too? Sasuke looked over at his father, who was smiling at him. Father. Sasuke greeted evenly. The Uchiha clan head's smile faltered for a moment. Good morning to you too, he said uncertainly. The family fell into an awkward silence as they ate their breakfast. This was not unusual. Whenever they ate together, there was always an uncomfortable atmosphere that stifled conversation. At least when father was present, a rare event. Though in the last 4 years, Sasuke had noticed that his father tried to be at home more often. When his father wasn't present, the young Uchiha boy was more open to conversation with his mother and brother. Itachi's not here, Sasuke said. Is he out on a mission? A stupid question, but even Sasuke couldn't stand the silence. He was here last night. His father nodded. He left not long after you went to bed. He was summoned by the Hokage. Haven't seen him since. Any idea when he'll be back? His mother asked. Father shrugged his shoulders. He's an Anbu Mikoto. You know how their missions can be. He could be gone for days or weeks. Even months depending on what the mission entails. His mother had a worried look on her face for a second or two. Her features relaxed. You're right. Itachi is a grown man now. He can handle himself. She looked over at Sasuke, giving him a warm, fond smile. Just like what you will be one day, my little duckling. Mom. The Uchiha matriarch laughed. I'm sorry, she said, getting a hold of herself. The both of you are growing so quickly. I want to be able to enjoy these moments. One day I'll take my eyes off you, and the next I look back, you'll be all grown up. You'll have your own family to worry about. She looked back at her husband. I'm sure Itachi will be fine. He is, after all, one of the best shinobi this village has ever produced. Father nodded. He is. Then he looked over at Sasuke. I hear that you got top marks on your last exam. Sasuke slowly nodded, he had just finished his food. I did. He responded. His father nodded approvingly. That's good to hear. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? Sasuke stood up from his seat. I'm heading out for the academy, he said. Without another word, he turned around and went for the door. His father called out to him just as his hand touched the frame. Perhaps, you can invite your friends over to celebrate? Sasuke remained silent for a second before he responded. I guess. He opened the door and closed it. Behind him. He lingers just outside the door. Long enough to overhear his parents' conversation. There, Fugaku. I know you're trying. I know. His father said, frustrated. No, not frustrated, exhausted. At times, I feel like he hates me. Fugaku, my dear. Sasuke doesn't hate you. There was a brief pause. He's just not comfortable with you. Is that supposed to make me feel better? He heard his father say dryly. Just give it time. He'll warm up to you. What you need to do is keep trying. Show that you do care and that you've changed. Sasuke didn't stay around long enough to hear the end of the conversation. His mother was right, he didn't hate his father. Though he felt that uncomfortable didn't describe how he felt about his father. He wasn't sure what word could be used to describe it. Deep down, the boy knew his father was trying to reach out to him. That he had changed from the man he had known for most of his life. But he wouldn't let that man get close to him. He was scared that if he did, he would only get hurt. Sasuke knew he wasn't fair with his father. But he couldn't bring himself to trust his father after what happened 4 years ago. He exited the compound and entered the streets of Konoha. Immediately he braced himself for the looks he would receive. Even 4 years after what became known as the Uchiha betrayal, people still shot him dirty looks, and he would hear whispers of how he came from a clan of traitors. It didn't matter that most of the clan remained loyal to the village or that his father had personally defeated the leader of the insurgents, people still looked down on him. Though he did admit that they were less frequent now. The young Uchiha silently made his way to the academy. Konoha Shinobi Academy, Sasuke-kun. Will you go out with me? For the last time, I said no. Sasuke said, not bothering to hide his irritability. Now go away. You're bothering my friends and me. He told of the fangirl. The girl looked dejected. Are you sure about that, Sasuke-kun? The girl pleads with her obsession. Sasuke shot the girl a glare that had her go rigid. Yes. He said coolly. The girl ran off, joining with a group of girls who looked torn between scolding her or sympathizing with her. Sasuke held a hand up to his forehead and sighed. This had become a frequent occurrence since he came to the academy and seemingly got worse not long after the betrayal. Every day a girl or several would approach him asking for a date or shower him with praises and gifts. On a rare occasion, a mob of them would chase him around the village, a terrifying experience in its own right. Good thing he had the help of Naruto and Hinata to deal with them. Otherwise, he might have been guilty of mass murder by now. Sasuke walked back to where his friends were sitting. He sat down next to Naruto. Why me? He said with a huff. Can't they see I'm not interested in any of them? Sure, they all were pretty, but no of them held his interest. To be honest, most of them seem shallow to him. What do you have to complain about? The blonde next to him said, several eyes floating lazily around him. You've got lots of girls chasing after you. Do you have any idea how many guys want to be in your position? Sasuke rolled his eyes, a smirk present on his mouth. Let me guess, you're one of them? He said. For a moment, he thought he saw Hinata stiffen. Naruto playfully rubbed his chin. Well, I wouldn't mind. He said with a small laugh. I mean, seriously? I'm better looking than you are and stronger. Why don't I have a bunch of fangirls chasing me around? Sasuke rolled his eyes, only slightly amused by his blindfold friend's antics. Maybe it's because they know you're already taken. He commented, his eyes shot over to Hinata. It was almost admirable how the Hyuga heiress held back a squeak. Naruto tilted his head to the side. What's that supposed to mean? He asked, confused. Sasuke shook his head. Oh, nothing. Just a little joke. His smirk had grown. Naruto frowned as he eyed him. You making a joke? That's new. Naruto's eyes turned over to where the group of fangirls was. His head remained facing Sasuke. He had a thoughtful look on his face. Sasuke was almost certain that was a sign of the end days. I will admit that none of them are very interesting. He wrapped his arm around Hinata, surprising the girl. I mean, none of them are as pretty as Hinata-chan. And she's so nice. This time the poor girl did squeak and turned beet red. Any guy would be lucky to have her. The girl slumped into his shoulders. Naruto looked down at the unconscious girl, panic quickly taking over. Hinata-chan. Sasuke tried his best to hold back his laughter and failed. Naruto's head shot up at him, several pairs of eyes seemingly glaring at him. This isn't funny, team. Hinata could be seriously sick. Sasuke got control of himself. Dope, Hinata's is just fine. She just got a little overheated. He said to placate his friend. The blonde continued to glare at him, though some confusion was settling in. Overheated? Naruto asked. Sasuke shook his head. Again, it's nothing. He stood up and walked over to Hinata. "Come on, if it makes you feel better, we can take her to the nurse." He knelt and picked the girl up, swinging her limp arm around his shoulder. Naruto's features relaxed, and he nodded. The boy swung Hinata's other arm around his shoulder. Both boys stood up, lifting the unconscious Hyuga up, and proceeded to carry her to the nurse's office. The whole time Sasuke had a smile on his face. Minutes later, the nurse had assured them, i.e., Naruto, that Hinata was just fine, and what she needed was rest. While waiting for the girl to wake up or for classes to resume, whichever came first, Sasuke decided to use the restroom. Exiting the restroom, Sasuke started to return to the nurse's office. It would not be long before lunch ended, and classes resumed. He had to make sure that his blonde friend got to them on time. He didn't want to face a scolding from Hinata. The Hyuga heiress was as sweet as a flower, but that girl could be scary when she needed to be. He had taken a few steps when his day decided to take a turn. Well, if it isn't the Uchiha traitor. Sasuke's mood quickly soured as he recognized the voice. He turned around to see three boys glaring at him. "What is it you want, Daisuke?" he said to the leader of the trio, a boy with a bandana wrapped around his head. "What, can't upperclassmen greet their juniors?" Daisuke said mockingly. Daisuke and his friends, underlings, were in the year ahead of them. Daisuke had taken an immediate disliking towards Sasuke, for what reasons he didn't care to find out. At first, the older boy had been tolerable, seemingly satisfied to shoot glares at him whenever they saw each other. Then after the Uchiha betrayal, the boy had started to go out of his way to make his amnesty known to Sasuke. He frequently picked fights with the young Uchiha and always accused him of being a traitor. His bullying wasn't limited just to him, he tried to pick on his friends as well. "Hello," Sasuke greeted with a mocking smile. "Now go away." He turned around, hoping to get away from the trio. His day was going good, and he wanted to keep it that way. No such luck. He felt a presence appear in front of him, and a hand slammed into the wall. Sasuke looked to see that the bandana-wearing boy had gotten in front of him, blocking his way. Sasuke tried to move around the boy, but his friends had closed in, trapping the Uchiha. "Now, is that any way to greet your seniors?" Daisuke said with a venomous smile. Sasuke resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "I don't have time for this," Sasuke said to the boy. "Get out of my Daisuke. I have better things to do than deal with you and your underlings." "Oi, who calling an underling?" a boy with a shaved head said. "We're his friends, right Daisuke?" "Can it, Kaito?" rebuked Daisuke. Then he turned his attention back to Sasuke. Typical Uchiha, acting so high and mighty. Always thinking you're better than us, just because of an eye infection. No wonder no one likes your clan. The boy's glare intensified. "I'm not at all surprised your clan tried to overthrow the village. To be frank, I think the Hokage was too easy on you. He should have had all of you killed. You're nothing more than a bunch of traitors." Sasuke gritted his teeth at the comparison to his clan. "I'm not a traitor," he almost shouted. "I was almost killed that night, and my mother was severely injured." He saw Daisuke roll his eyes. "Yeah, right," he said. "You know what I think?" He brought his face in closer to Sasuke's. "I think that the whole Uchiha betrayal was faked." Sasuke's blood was boiling now. "Fake?" he said. "Yes," Daisuke answered. "Once word got out about your little coup, your father pretended to call it off. Then to make things more convincing, he engineered the betrayal to make it look like only part of your clan were traitors. When, in truth, all of you are traitors. Your clan is just biding its time before they try to take over the village." "That's not true," Sasuke shouted at Daisuke. The memories were surfacing again. A blade shooting from his mother's back, a red liquid dripping off the edge. Daisuke grabbed him by the hair. Of course, it is. He said in a low tone, almost coming out as a growl. You call me a liar, traitor? At this point, Sasuke would have not been surprised if his teeth were cracking with the way he was grinding them now. I'm not a traitor. Would he always have to live this stigma? Would he never escape the shadow of what his clan had almost done? Daisuke's eyes narrowed. You are, just like the rest of your clan. His grip on Sasuke's hair tightened. The Hokage should have had all of you executed. Sasuke's hands balled into fists. He had enough of Daisuke's accusations. He didn't care how much trouble he got into. What's going here? A voice called, stopping the fight before it began. Sasuke felt Daisuke let go of his hair. All four boys looked in the direction of the voice. Well? Iruka asked, shooting them all a stern glare. Is anyone going to tell me? Oh, it's nothing. Daisuke said with a forced smile. We were just hanging out with our junior here. He gestured to Sasuke. We found him all in the hall here. So, we thought he could use the company. He looked over at his lackeys. Right, guys? Yeah, that's right. Kaito said. The other boy nodded. The scared Chunin raised an eyebrow, keeping a neutral expression. Is that right? He said. It looks a bit more than that to me. Daisuke laughed nervously. Well, Uchiha-san wanted to have some fun. And I'll admit we might have gotten a little carried away. He explained. Iruka seemed unconvinced. His gaze landed on Sasuke. Uchiha-san, I want to hear your side of this. Is what he said true? For a brief moment, Sasuke thought about telling his sensei the truth. It would get Daisuke and his goons off him for a while. But then he would go back to messing with him and his friends, and they would be more relentless about it. Yes, Iruka-sensei. Sasuke said, deciding it wasn't worth it in the long run. Besides, the older boy would be in the academy for another year or two before graduating. Then he would likely never see him again. It is as they say. Iruka looked at him with an unreadable expression. For a moment, Sasuke thought that the man didn't buy their story. Iruka let out a sigh. Very well. I believe you. He said. He faced Daisuke. Daisuke-san, if you and your friends have enough time to hang out with your juniors, then you have enough time to do me a favor. Daisuke kept his smile. Of course, Iruka-sensei. What is it? I need you to head down to the storage room and pick up some supplies for me. Here is a list of the stuff I need. He produced a slip of paper from his pocket. Bring them to my classroom before classes end. I'll let your sensei know you'll be late. Daisuke took the slip and bowed. Of course, we'll get it done right away. He looked over at Sasuke, giving him a contemptuous smile. Be seeing you around, Uchiha-san. Come on, guys, let's go. Daisuke walked down the hall, with his two lackeys following close behind. When they were gone, Iruka sighed. He turned over to Sasuke. All right, Sasuke. He said, crossing his arms. Tell me the truth. Were Daisuke and his friends bullying you? Sasuke should have known that Iruka wasn't going to buy their story. No, they weren't. He said, trying to walk away. He felt a hand land on his shoulder. Sasuke looked up at Iruka. The scared Chunin was giving him an intense stare. Sasuke, you shouldn't let them bully you like this. Letting them get away with this will only encourage them to continue. Now, are you sure that Daisuke was telling the truth? Sasuke held back a scowl. Why couldn't he let this go? Yes, I'm sure. Sasuke said. Iruka continued to give him an intense stare. After a moment, Sasuke looked away. Look, I'm glad you're concerned. But I can handle it myself. He hesitated for a moment as the next word danced on his tongue. I'm an Uchiha. We can handle ourselves, and I have my friends with me. Sasuke looked back at Iruka, seeing the man continue his look of worry. Then he let out a defeated sigh and removed his hand. Fine, I'll let this go. The man said, sounding like he was trying to convince himself. But only just this once. But if I see this happen again. It's off to the headmaster with them, understood? Sasuke nodded. Yes, Iruka-sensei. He waited for his sensei to say something more. When he got nothing, the young Uchiha boy began to walk off. I could always use an assistant or two. Sasuke paused when he heard Iruka talk. Those boys seemed like they had plenty of time on their hands. Perhaps I can keep them busy. Sasuke opened his mouth to say something. He closed it and nodded. Thanks. He said just above a whisper. Then he walked off. Somewhere in the forest of Konoha, despite what Naruto believed, Sasuke did like being alone. It gave him the chance to think. He didn't mind the company that the blindfolded blonde and Hinata provided and even enjoyed it. But there were times when he wanted to be alone, truly alone and not under the watchful eyes of his friend's little spies. Sasuke had long since figured out when Naruto was keeping one of his eyes on him. He hadn't felt anything since coming to the park. Sasuke smiled to himself. It seemed his closest friend realized that he wanted to be alone. He knew Naruto was worried for him. Ever since he returned from his break, the boy with whisker marks had given him worried glances. Sasuke was certain that he saw the exchange with Daisuke and his cohorts. He was tempted to stop Naruto when he got that look that promised humiliation for the three. However, he stopped himself knowing how stubborn his friend could be, and admittedly partially looking forward to whatever happened to Daisuke. Sasuke looked around the wooded area of the park. He quickly realized he had wandered off further than he intended to. Briefly, the young Uchiha boy debated if he should go back to the park or continue to explore this part of the woods. Sasuke decided to go with the latter. There was a chance that he would run into someone if he returned to the park. Right now, he wanted to be alone, to think. Today had been a bit more overwhelming than he would have liked. Between his father, the continued whispers of the villagers, and Daisuke, Sasuke found that he needed to be alone to think. Putting his hands in his pockets, Sasuke began to walk through the forest, having no direction in mind. Listening to the chirping of the birds, he began to enjoy the peacefulness of the forest, and soon the stress of the day began to ebb away. With the stress slowly being lifted off his shoulders, Sasuke found that his thoughts began to become clearer. Things were not as bad as they were a few years ago. Relations between his clan and the village were slowly improving. Whispers of the Uchiha being traitors were dying down, still present but not as prevalent as they were before and after the Uchiha betrayal. Daisuke, while a nuisance, was just a thug. He and his friends could handle him and his lackeys. As for his father, well, that was something he could deal with later. Soon enough, he found himself simply enjoying his walk through the forest. He didn't know how long he had been walking, minutes. Hours? He came to a clearing in the forest. He didn't know why, but Sasuke felt like there was something special about this clearing. It didn't seem any different from the other clearings he and his friends had found in the forest in the village. Except for a lone tree in the center. It seemed unmarkable. He did admit it was a nice place. Perhaps he would bring Naruto and Hinata here tomorrow, he thought, turning around. Then he stopped. Not far from him was a small hill that overlooked the clearing. Sasuke squinted his eyes, looking at the top of the hill. Was that? Sasuke took a step closer, trying to get a better look. Was that a person? Curious about who the person, if it was a person, Sasuke walked towards and up the hill. Who would be all the way out here? He asked himself. Then belated realized he would be included in the answer to that question. As he got closer, he was able to make out more details of the person. It was a girl with long brown hair that went past her shoulders, and she looked to be around his age, maybe a little older. She was sitting down on a chair in front of something. Coming at the girl from a slight angle, Sasuke saw that it was a painting of some kind. Judging by the brush in the girl's hand, it wasn't hard to judge who the artist was. He paid the painting attention, as his eyes were fixated on the girl. Beautiful. That was the only way to describe her. She was more beautiful than any girl he had seen in the village. He stopped just a few feet away from the girl, continuing to stare at her. He wanted to say something, get the girl's attention. But he couldn't, whatever sound he tried to make would die in his throat. He just kept staring at the girl, fixated by her. He wanted to soak in every detail of the girl. The way her brown hair blew in the air, the way her hand tightened around the brush when she added another brush to her painting. He wanted to see what her eyes looked like, what color they were. Just one step over, and he could see the rest of her face. His feet remained planted to the ground. He knew how much of a creep he was by staring at the girl with her knowing. When he finally did open his mouth, the sound of thunder broke him out of the spell. He looked out to the sky hanging over the clearing. The Uchiha boy was surprised to see dark clouds were forming in the sky. Wasn't it just clear day's sky a moment ago? He thought to himself. The girl seemed to have not noticed the sudden change in the weather. So fixated on her work, she hadn't noticed that storm was coming. Oddly enough, that fixation added to her allure. A part of him wanted to let her continue with her painting, even if it meant that she may become soaking wet. It seemed wrong to interrupt her now when she was undoubtedly focusing so hard on finishing her painting. The other more sensible part of him won out. If she did get soaked in the rain, she would get sick for days. That was something he didn't wish on her. Not to mention she might not look as pretty if she was soaked in the rain. Sasuke shook his head. Sasuke, get a hold of yourself. You don't want this very pretty girl to get wet in the rain. It would be rude. So just get her attention and let her know that a storm is coming, he told himself. His eyes glided back over to the girl, ready to get her attention. It was then he noticed what the girl was painting. In the center, painted with remarkable detail, was the lone tree in the center of the clearing. It was such a simple little thing, yet Sasuke was impressed. The tree was the only thing on the canvas, with a bit of green surrounding it, no signs of the clearing surrounding it. Was the girl only painting the tree? Or would she add it later? He would have to ask her later when he got them out of the forest. What impressed him the most was how real the tree looked in the painting. The colors, shadings, and even the way the tree casts its shadow all looked so real, so alike the subject. It was almost like he could reach out into the painting and feel the bark on the tree. It's a nice painting, he thought. The girl's shoulders jolted, with her hand stopping mid-brush. Wait. Did I say that aloud? Sasuke asked dumbly. The girl's head slowly turned. For a second brown eyes met with onyx eyes. The eyes were just as pretty as the rest of her. Neither individual spoke as they stared at each other. Now seeing the girl's full face, Sasuke soaked in every detail he could. Come on, Sasuke, say something. You're looking like a creep here, just staring at her. Hi. Sasuke said weakly. He was almost certain that his blush could rival Hinata's, judging by the intense heat he felt right now. That spurred the girl into action as she stood straight, almost knocking her chair over. She grabbed her painting and darted off. Panicking, Sasuke spun around and shot his hand out. Wait! Only for his feet to trip over themselves and his face meet with the ground. Nice going, Sasuke, he said to himself. Rather than risk further embarrassment, Sasuke stayed where he was, not even bothering to turn over to face the sky, and he didn't care if he would get soaked from the rain. Sometime later, he felt a familiar presence hang over him. "Sasuke?" He heard Itachi's cool voice say. "Yes, Itachi?" Sasuke's muffled voice answered. "What are you doing?" "Trying not to die from embarrassment." "I see." He knew his brother was smiling right now. "I think you're succeeding." Sasuke felt like groaning. "Are you going to get up?" "That depends." "Are we the only ones here?" Sasuke asked. "I believe so, yes." Itachi replied. "Then yes, I am." Sasuke said, using his arms to push himself up. Itachi helped him up. "Thanks." Sasuke dusted himself off. His brother was giving him a quizzical look. "Dare I ask what happened here?" he said with a small hint of a smile. Sasuke turned away, feeling a blush creep across his face. "I fell." "You fell?" Itachi questioned. Sasuke walked past his brother. "Yes, I fell." "Now, are you going to take me home or not?" He felt a little sorry for snapping at his brother like that. But Sasuke wasn't in a mood to explain. "I suppose I will," Itachi said, taking a step up next to Sasuke. The whole way back, one thing dominated Sasuke's mind. Will I meet her again? He never noticed that the storm clouds had cleared away. "Kurama clan compound, where were you?" "Painting." Yakumo responded to her uncle. She showed him her painting. Her uncle Unkai looked between her and the painting in her hands. "You were outside again? Weren't you?" He got no answer. "You know you're not supposed to leave the compound." "It was only for a little bit." Yakumo argued back. "I didn't go far." She turned the painting over, looking over her work. She noted the storm cloud, she added. Her uncle ran his hand through his hair, sighing in frustration. "It's for your own safety," he said. "You're still learning to control your abilities. Not to mention your weak constitution. He fears you." A voice in the back of her mind said. Yakumo ignored it. "I know." The journey to and back from the forest clearing had been difficult. Her uncle walked over behind her. "It's a good painting," he said. Yakumo nodded, she felt it could use a little more work. "It's not complete yet. I'll be sure to add it to your collection when you do," her uncle said. "Did anyone see you?" Yakumo thought back to the boy she saw in the clearing. As she ran past him, she had caught a glimpse of the symbol on his back. What was an Uchiha doing so far in the forest? Why did he approach her? Why did she run from him? Most importantly, why couldn't she get him out of her mind? No. She lied. Good. Her uncle said, walking in front of her. "Kurenai-san will be here soon. I suggest you get ready for your tutoring session." Yakumo's eyes lit a bit. Maybe her sensei would know why she was feeling this way. "I will, uncle." Her uncle gave her a soft smile. "You may want to get some rest. I imagine your time outside has left you a little tired." "Yes, get some rest." The voice taunted her. "We'll have some fun before your slave master arrives." Again, she ignored the voice. "Thank you, uncle," she said with a forced smile. "I'll consider it." Konoha, training grounds outside the academy. Naruto was more observant than he let on. He had to be back when he lived in the orphanage. At that time, he had to be careful of the people around him. By observing the people around him, he learned to discern their intentions towards him. After being taken in by the Hyuga, he had retained that habit. It was how he was able to know that Hinata, her parents, her uncle, Sarah, and all his friends were people he could trust. It was also how he knew that the Hyuga elders, Mizuki, and that bandage man that he sometimes saw around Gigi were people to be avoided. He had only gotten better at it when he got his Fudogen. So, it should be no surprise that Naruto noticed something was off with Sasuke. At first, he had thought it was just one of his moods, or he was having a tough time with his family. Now he was thinking that something else was going on. He wasn't brooding like he normally would when he was in one of his moods. Well, that wasn't entirely true. Sasuke was brooding. Just not in the usual, life hates me, sort of way. More like he was trying to think of something. Hey, guys. Naruto said, getting the attention of his friends. Isn't Sasuke acting a little strange? Kiba looks over at Sasuke for a second. Then back at Naruto and shrugged his shoulders. He seems like his brooding self. Naruto would have rolled his eyes if he still had them in his head. That's not what I meant, Kiba. Sasuke has been quiet. Isn't he always quiet? Choji asked. Troublesome. Shikamaru yawned. He means that Sasuke-san has been unusually quiet. Naruto nodded at the lazy boy, glad that someone else had taken notice. Yeah, he's been like this all week. At first, I thought he was being broodier than usual. Now I'm not so sure. Kiba and Choji looked over at where Sasuke was. Sitting up against a tree with his hands crossed together over his mouth, ignoring everything around him. Both boys looked back at him, still looking confused. I don't know. Man. He still looks like the broody asshole he all know and don't love. Actually, Choji began. He does seem a little off now that you pointed it out. Shikamaru sighed. Whatever it is, you would be the one to notice. You and Hinata spend more time around him than we do. Why don't you try and ask him what's on his mind? Naruto thought about it for a moment. Naruto knew he wasn't the most sensitive of people. Sure, he knew how to read people, however, as Kurama put it, he had a rather blunt way of dealing with people. It was something he was learning to curve. I guess. Naruto answered. It couldn't hurt to ask. Right? He said his goodbyes to his friends and walked out to Sasuke. Coming up on the Uchiha boy, Naruto asked. Hey, Sasuke. Mind if I sit by you? He was waving his hand. Sasuke looked up at Naruto, briefly irritated before recognizing who was talking to him. Sure. He said, moving over slightly before going back to his thinking pose. Naruto said his thanks, which was ignored. He sat close by Sasuke, leaning his back into the tree. So, how's your day been? He asked. Good. Sasuke said, not moving. Naruto frowned. Well, my day's been good. Woke up, ate some ramen, fought off an army of missing nin attacking the village. That's nice. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto continues with his story. Yeah, Gigi was so thankful that he made me Hokage. We had this big, huge party to celebrate, and everyone was invited. We had lots of fun. That's nice. It was all fine until the Kyuubi attacked, and we all died. Now he was seeing if he could get any reaction from the boy. Really? You couldn't come up with something better than Giant Murder Fox attacking the village? Said Giant Murder Fox asked. Well, at least I won this time. Third time's the charm, as they say. I'm not letting you out, to find out. Naruto retorted at the fox. He heard Kurama snort in his head. Don't worry, Kit. Even if I was under the influence, I've learned my lesson. Don't mess with the nice little tree huggers. Can you go back to doing whatever you usually do? I'm trying to help my friend here. Naruto thought. When he got no response from the Biju, Naruto turned his attention to Sasuke. The boy was still in his brooding pose, staring at the ground. It was a small surprise that a small fire hadn't started. Okay, so the roundabout way wasn't working. Time to go with a more direct method. If Sasuke were paying any attention, he would have noticed the fox grin on Naruto's face. Hey, Sasuke, is that an army of fangirls? They all look like they're wearing wedding dresses. If Sasuke had shot up any faster, he might have set the tree behind them on fire. I don't. He shouted frantically, looking around the training ground. His legs shifted in different directions, ready to bolt for an escape route. Naruto was covering his stomach as he laughed. A confused look settled on Sasuke's face as he continued to look for the non-existent army of fangirls. Then he looked down at Naruto, still clutching to his stomach. Naruto watched with a wide grin as Sasuke's mind processed his little prank. He could almost see the moment when it clicked in the Uchiha boy's mind and multiple angles. If stairs could kill, then Naruto would be ashes right now. Naruto. Sasuke growled. It's not funny. It kind of is. Naruto said, getting some control over his laughter. Seriously, you should have seen your face. Sasuke rolled his eyes and sat back down. What was that for? He asked, shooting the blonde a glare. Mainly because I thought it would be funny. Naruto responded with a toothy smile. Sasuke continued to glare at the blonde. I was trying to get your attention. You were brooding again. I was brooding? Sasuke questioned. Yeah, like this. Naruto did his best impression of a brooding Sasuke, hands crossed over his mouth and all. Hey! It's bad enough you're hanging out with one of them. Karma barked. I don't need you picking up their bad habits. He ignored the fox. I don't look like that. Sasuke complained. Naruto could the cracks of a smile. You did. Naruto leaned back on the tree, crossing his hands behind his head. At least until I got here to spread my cheer. Is there any way I return that? Sorry, no returns on my gifts. Or exchange them for something else. Naruto said. I don't think I could find anyone who would want it. Sasuke said with a smirk. So, what was you wanted? I know you didn't give me a heart attack just to get a laugh. Though I wouldn't hold it above you. Naruto was tempted to make another joke but decided it was best to cut right to the point. It's connected to the whole brooding thing you had going before. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. You've been like that all week. All week? Naruto nodded. Yeah. I thought it was nothing at first. You get broody sometimes, nothing unusual. In a day or two, you would have been back to normal. Though I just learned that some people can't tell the difference. I get broody? Sasuke asked. Would stop interrupting and let me finish? Sasuke gestured for him to continue. Good. As I said, you've been like this all week. So, I was wondering, is something going on with your family or with your clan? What? No. Sasuke answered. My clan isn't planning another coup if that's what you're thinking. No, that's not what I meant. Naruto said quickly. He could have phrased his question better. It wouldn't surprise if they were. Kurama so helpfully supplied. Can you take your Uchiha-hating ways somewhere else? No. Okay, next question. Naruto said. Are you getting along with your dad? No more than I usually do. Sasuke quipped. He was getting irritated. Alright, it had nothing to do with his family. Best to get off the topic before his friend began to breathe fire on him. Does it have anything to do with your little encounter with Daisuke and his cronies last week? Naruto asked as the thought occurred to him. You saw that? Naruto gave the Uchiha boy a deadpan stare. 3 pairs of eyes floated down. Did you forget that I like to keep an eye on my friends and everyone else? I saw the whole thing. Sasuke had a nervous smile. Sometimes I forget that. I've gotten used to it, so I don't think much of it. He explained. But no, it has nothing to do with Daisuke. What makes thing I would even think about that guy for half a minute, let alone a whole week? Well, I have. Naruto said. I've got something special in mind for him. Dare I ask? Sasuke said with a ghost of a smile. Not unless you want to be an accessory. Naruto said with his trademark fox grin. But let's just say the team will never look at rubber duckies the same again. For a moment, Naruto saw a flash of sympathy in Sasuke's eyes. Then it vanished. So, what has been on your mind? And don't say nothing because I'll never buy it. A mixture of different expressions morphed across Sasuke's face as he seemed to debate if he was going to tell his story. I had an encounter last week. Sasuke nervously began. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He had never known Sasuke to be nervous. An encounter? Sasuke hesitantly nodded. After classes were over, I went to the park and wandered off into the forest. That day I had a lot to think about, so I wanted to be alone to unwind. That much Naruto could follow. He understood while Sasuke was a close friend to him and Hinata, there were times when he wanted to be alone. I eventually came to a clearing, and there I met someone. Sasuke began to scratch his cheek, and was that a blush? Okay, now, this was getting interesting. You met someone in the forest? Naruto had to wonder who else would be so deep in the forest. Yeah, I saw her sitting up on this hill. Sasuke continued with his story. When I got closer, I saw that she was. Wait, you said she? Naruto asked. As in you met a girl? Sasuke slowly nodded. Yes. He said carefully. Naruto's grin had turned into a full-blown smile. Go on. Sasuke had a I'm starting to regret this expression. As I got closer to her, I saw that she was painting something. It looked like the tree that was in the middle of the clearing. Then I kind of watched her. Let me guess. You were struck by how pretty she was. Naruto said, having no idea how close to the mark he was. And here I thought you had no interest in girls. Naruto. Sasuke warned. The blonde chuckled and waved his friend off. Kidding. But seriously, do you have any idea how creepy that sounds? You were staring at a girl without her noticing. It wasn't my fault. Sasuke defended himself. But I did get her attention when I mentioned how nice her painting was. So, what happened next? We just stared at each other, and I said, hi. Sasuke's blush had grown brighter. Then she kind of ran away from me. I tried to go after, but Sasuke trailed off. But you? Naruto said, waving his hand for the Uchiha boy to continue. I tripped and fell on my face. Sasuke finished just above a whisper. Naruto stared at Sasuke for 2 or 3 seconds before he burst into laughter. You tripped and fell on your face? He was holding his stomach, trying to keep it from popping open. Inside his mind, he could hear Kurama snickering. Sasuke's blushing face had a frown on it. Naruto, this isn't funny. Then why am I laughing? Naruto said between breaths. Oh, wait until I tell Hinata-chan. She's going to bust a gut. Sasuke's frown had now turned into a deathly glare. Naruto. He said in an icy tone. If you do not stop laughing right now, Sarah will learn about the time you snuck into the red light district. Naruto's laughter immediately died in his throat. You wouldn't dare. He said, turning pale. He didn't want to imagine what Sarah would do to him if she found out about that. It was just a bit of curiosity, honest. Try me. Sasuke said. Naruto decided it was best not to find out. Alright, I'm done. He said, leaning back on the tree. So, what happened after after that? He quickly amended. Sasuke's blush had returned. I sort of remained there until my brother came and got me. Okay. Naruto said carefully, he wasn't risking Sasuke's fury again. And that's it. Sasuke finished. I've tried to put the incident out of mind ever since. But every time I think my mind races back to that girl. Naruto was smiling again. So, for a whole week, you've been thinking about a girl? He said with a slightly teasing tone. Naruto, my threat still applies. His friend warned. Alright, I'm done. Spoil sport. Naruto wasn't about to let go of this source to tease his friend. He was just going to wait. But it is kind of nice to know that you found someone who caught your interest. I wouldn't mind meeting her. Have you tried looking for her? I have. Sasuke said. Whenever I leave the compound, I've tried to keep an eye out for her. Even tried to look around the academy to see if she came here. I haven't found a trace of her. Maybe she's a civilian, or he's trained by her family, Naruto said. Maybe. Sasuke said, putting his head on his knees. The more I think about her, the more I want to meet her, and the more frustrated I get when I don't. I've searched the village and haven't found the slightest trace of her. It's almost like she doesn't exist. Naruto could see where Sasuke was coming from. What if he tried looking everywhere for Hinata and couldn't find her? He wouldn't be able to get any sleep. So, how long will you look for? He asked. Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. However long it takes, I guess. Naruto wanted to help his friend. He thought of all the possible places where they could find the girl. Ichiraku, the Hokage Tower, one of the many shops in the village, the park. Naruto sat up at the last thought. Sasuke, you've tried searching at every place you think she might be. Right? He got a nod from the boy, followed by a curious look. So why not try looking at the one place you know you saw her? Sasuke raised his head. What? He asked. Naruto grinned. Do you remember where you found that clearing? I think I do. Sasuke said after a second of thinking. Then go there and look for her. Naruto said. If you found her there before, and then you could find her there again. You think that could work? Yeah. I mean, it's as good of a place as any. Naruto reasoned. I guess you're right. Sasuke said. I'm always right. Naruto responded. Sasuke huffed. Not always. He said. The bell rang, signaling that class would soon resume. Looks like about time we got back to class. Sasuke stood up, dusting off his pants. Naruto did the same. Do we really have to? He asked. Can't we just sneak out somewhere? Classes are so boring, especially when Iruka-sensei gets into his lecture mode. Sasuke rolled his eyes. And risk your caretaker's wrath? No, thank you. He walked out from under the tree. Naruto quickly followed behind him. Naruto. Yes? Thanks. I'll try looking for that clearing tomorrow. Sasuke said. You're welcome. Naruto said. What are friends for? Now come, let's hurry before Iruka-sensei yells at us. Later that day, Kurama clan compound Yakumo was distracted, that much Kurenai was certain of. But what she couldn't figure out was what was distracting her. Yakumo-san, focus. She said to her student. I am Kurenai-sensei. Yakumo said, continuing to mold her chakra. Looking around, the Genjutsu mistress could see that her student was struggling to maintain the illusion. She was standing in what appeared to be a forest clearing. A gentle breeze was coming from the west. But she was really standing in one of the training rooms within the Kurama compound. What she was seeing now was a Genjutsu. Her student belonged to the Kurama clan, a once powerful and feared clan. Its members were known to create genjutsu so powerful that their opponents were known to injure themselves or die from them. As a genjutsu practitioner herself, Kurenai was both fascinated and terrified of such power. However, over the years, the Kurama clan's fame had diminished as their power began to wane and their numbers dwindled. Then there was the fact that their power came with a dark secret. It seemed that the Kurama clan was destined to fade into obscurity within a generation or two. That is until Yakumo was born. Her power was stronger than any other member of the Kurama clan recorded in history. For the Kurama clan, Yakumo was their last hope to return to its former glory. However, this came with its own set of problems. Problems that the Kurama had yet to rectify, and for some reason, they believed that Kurenai could help with. How do they expect me to help this girl with her literal inner demon? Kurenai asked herself. She looked around the forest, wondering if it came straight out of her apprentice's imagination. Or if she had seen this place before and recreated it. Though it didn't matter to her, the forest was finely made and could fool the average citizen and shinobi. But the more experienced shinobi could see the flaws in the genjutsu, and this being her field of expertise, Kurenai could differently see them. Despite her claims to the contrary, the Kurama girl was not concentrating any harder than she was before. Kurenai sighed and held up her hands into a seal. Kai, she said, sending out a burst of her chakra. In an instant, the illusion of the forest vanished, like it was being washed away by the tides of water. Looking around again, Kurenai saw she was now standing in the Kurama training room. Along the walls, finely written, were an array of kanji that formed the room's ceiling matrix. They were meant to keep any genjutsu from straying outside into the compound. Looking back to her apprentice, the girl gave her an expression of equal surprise and frustration. Kurenai-sensei, why did you break my genjutsu? She asked. Because you weren't concentrating. Kurenai explained. But I was. Yakumo protested. No, you weren't. The genjutsu mistress said back. I could see the flaws in your genjutsu. Now you might have been able to fool a civilian or even an inexperienced shinobi. But the experienced of our profession will see right through it. If this had been a real fight against an enemy shinobi, you would find yourself in a difficult situation. Kurenai didn't intend for the statement to come out so harsh. But that was the truth. Yakumo had a fantastic talent for the art of the genjutsu. But everywhere else, the girl was severely lacking. The girl was born with a fragile constitution and so couldn't perform taijutsu, and her chakra reserves were too small for her to be an effective ninjutsu practitioner. So that left genjutsu for the girl. The girl was adamant about becoming a shinobi of Konoha, insisting that she could become a great shinobi through genjutsu alone. Apparently, she drew inspiration from Guy's apprentice, one Rock Lee, a boy that was incapable of doing ninjutsu or genjutsu, so focused solely on taijutsu. From what Kurenai gathered, the boy was well on his way to becoming a shinobi of the village. So that left Kurenai in a difficult position. She understood the young Kurama girl's desire to become shinobi and prove to everyone that she could do so solely using genjutsu. She even wanted that to happen both as the girl's mentor and as one who prided herself on her art. But at the same time, the young jonin could not quash her fears for the girl. The heiress of the Kurama was so fragile and lacked stamina that if she ever encountered someone who could counter her genjutsus, she would be unable to last long in a fight. She could even be killed. Kurenai sighed, wondering how life had become so complicated for her. I think it's best we call it for the day, she said. We did make some progress today. But Kurenai-sensei, I can keep going. Yakumo tried to argue. I'm doing better, I'm getting more control over my abilities. Just let him. Kurenai stopped the girl before she could argue more. I said we are taking the day off. It's clear to me that your mind is not on the task at hand. But Kurenai held up her hand to stop the girl. Training is over, she said a bit more firmly. Yakumo opened her mouth to say something more before closing it and bowing to her sensei. I suppose that I could use the break, she relented. I'm sorry if I couldn't live up to your expectations. I guess I have been a bit distracted today. Kurenai smiled at the girl, a warm motherly smile. It's all right, Yakumo-san, she said. We all days were for whatever reason we can't get much done. Or, in this case, a week. Try not to worry about it too much. She walked out to the training room's door and slid it open. Kurenai invited the girl over. Come on, how about we go out and get something to eat? My treat. The Kurama girl gave her a somewhat bewildered look. But you know I'm not allowed to leave the compound, she said, walking beside Kurenai as the two exited the training room. I think I can convince your uncle to let you out for a little bit. I've done it before, and we had problems, Kurenai said. Besides, I think you can use the fresh air. I think it might help you unwind. Even if I can't convince him, I'll find a way. If there was one thing she had learned from her friend Anko, it was that sometimes the rules did need to be bent. Yakumo gave her a bright smile. Now that was what she was looking for. All right, I think that could be fun, she said. All right then, Kurenai said, noting how happy the girl was about leaving. She really doesn't get out often, does she? That had been the first thing Kurenai noticed about Yakumo, just how lonely the girl looked. With her being so isolated at the Kurama compound, she probably didn't have many friends, if any at all. A shame, Yakumo was such a nice girl that Kurenai was certain that she would have no problems making friends, even if she were a little on the shy side. In a way, Yakumo almost reminded her of Hinata. I wonder if there's a way for me to introduce her to Hinata. I'm sure that the two would become fast friends. Kami knew that Yakumo could use a friend. Come on, Yakumo-san, let's see if we can convince your uncle to let you out for the day. It had taken some convincing, but eventually, Yakumo's uncle had allowed Kurenai to take her out into the village. That man was as stubborn as they came, and arguing with him was one of the most frustrating experiences in her life. But seeing the look of awe and wonder on Yakumo's face had made it worth it. They were now sitting in one of her favorite restaurants in the village, a little-known café. When the waiter left with their order, Kurenai decided now was a good time to ask her charge about what was distracting her. So, Yakumo, she said, getting the girl's attention. She had been staring out the window, watching the people go about their daily business. What's been on your mind lately? It's nothing, the girl said. I've just been distracted of late, that's all. Kurenai looked over the girl's face looking for any sign of what was occupying her mind. She quickly noticed the small blush on her face. Kurenai quirked an eyebrow, that was a little unexpected. Does it have anything to do with your little excursion into the forest last week? She dug a little further. The girl's eyes widened a little in surprise. Maybe, she answered, her blush grown a shade darker. Kurenai gave Yakumo a warm smile. Why don't you just tell me what happened? You know I'm going to keep pestering you about this, and I will find out. So why not save both of our times and tell me? Yakumo looked hesitant for a moment before she slowly nodded. Last week, I snuck out of the compound and went into the forest around the park. I wanted to paint alone. Kurenai nodded, following the story. This wasn't the first time she had done something like this, but clearly, something different had happened this time. I found a nice clearing, with this tree in the middle of it. I set up my supplies and started painting a landscape of the clearing. Before I knew it, I was almost finished. Kurenai thinks she remembers seeing a painting like that in Yakumo's room. It was hard to say. Yakumo liked to paint and had a room full of her works ranging from landscapes to abstracts. Like with genjutsu, the Kurama girl had a talent for the arts. The first time she had seen one of her paintings, Kurenai wondered why it wasn't on display in a museum. I was about to put the finishing details on it when Yakumo continued with her story. I heard a voice say, "It's a nice painting." I turned over my head, and I saw a. Yakumo's voice trailed off as her blush took on another shade of red. Ah. Kurenai leaned in on the table. You saw a what? Her curiosity piqued. She saw the Yakumo girl gulp and take a breath. A boy. She said quietly. Kurenai almost didn't hear it. I saw a boy. You saw a boy? Yes. In a boy the forest clearing last week? Yais. This was followed by a nod. And this boy has been on your mind all of this week? Kurenai leaned back into her chair, a small amount of amusement welling up inside her. So, what happened next? She asked with a smile that betrayed her feelings. I'm not entirely sure. Yakumo began. I think he tried to say something. But I got scared and ran off. I've been thinking about him ever since. Kurenai's smile grew, it almost sounded like the beginning of a crush. So, was he cute? What? Yakumo yelped, now having a blush that could rival one of Hinata's. Kurenai suppressed a chuckle. Was he cute? The boy you met. Was he cute? She asked. Yakumo fell silent for a second before she answered the question. I guess he was. She said. He was an Uchiha. And looked to be around my age. An Uchiha? Now that was interesting. What was an Uchiha boy doing in the forest? Yes, Yakumo confirmed. When I ran past him, I saw the Uchiha crest on his shirt. I see, Kurenai said. Was there anything else you noticed about this boy? Yakumo's eyes went down to the table as she seemed to think about last week. A huff that almost sounded like a laugh came. Well, there was this funny thing I noticed about him. She said with a smile. The back of his hair sort of resembled a duck's tail. Kurenai's eyes narrowed. That sounded familiar for some reason. The genjutsu mistress of Konoha racked her brain. Now, where had she heard about an Uchiha of that description? Maybe she could ask Itachi or Shisui the next she saw them. Itachi. It couldn't be. She said under her breath. You say something, Kurenai-sensei? Yakumo asked. Kurenai shook her and waved the girl off. It's nothing. Just a passing thought. What were the odds of her meeting that boy? So, you had this boy on your mind this whole time? Kurenai asked. Yakumo nodded. Yeah. He's been on my mind almost all the time. Even when I try to get him out of my mind, the thought of him comes back. And when I do stop thinking about him, all I want to do is think about him. Yakumo was fiddling with her finger. I don't get it. Kurenai-sensei, am I weird to think this way? Is it odd that I want to see him again? Kurenai bit her lip, wondering how she should go about answering the girl's question. The girl had been isolated from the rest of the village for most of her life. So, it made sense that she didn't know this sort of thing was normal for a girl like her. Without thinking, Kurenai's hand had reached across the table and touched Yakumo's hands. Yakumo, it's all right. What you're feeling right now is perfectly normal for a girl your age. Really? Yes. Kurenai confirmed. Take it from me. When I was your age, there were plenty of times when I had nothing but boys on my mind. Oh, Yakumo said, sounding a little relieved. So, this is normal? She got a nod from the young woman. Kurenai, is there any way I can see him again? Now Kurenai was faced with a decision, should she encourage Yakumo to pursue her desire to see this boy again? Or should she stop her? Kurenai was inclined to go with the former. If she did pursue the boy, she could make her first friend. And if it were who she thinks it was, it could lead her to make several friends. Having those friends at her side might help her gain the focus needed to control her abilities and become a great kunoichi. However, Kurenai was hesitant at the same time. Yakumo's abilities had a darker side to them that made it difficult to control them. If she encouraged the girl to meet this boy, she might put him and his friends in danger. Another layer of complication was added with him being an Uchiha. If he was harmed by Yakumo and his clan found out about it, then it could be the start of a conflict between the Kurama and Uchiha clans. Kurenai thinks that both points had their merits. Let her meet the boy and make her first friend, but risk harming him. Or deny her this chance and isolate her further from the village. Kurenai looked Yakumo in the eye, and she found that the decision was easy. She only hoped it was the right one. I'm not sure, Kurenai said, removing her hand from Yakumo's. Their orders had just arrived. A steaming hot coffee for Kurenai and chocolate parfait for Yakumo. If he is an Uchiha, we could always schedule a visit to the Uchiha compound and ask around. But we would have to tell my uncle about this, Yakumo said. He wouldn't allow it. Kurenai wanted to argue against that, but she knew the man well enough to know Yakumo was right. Her uncle was strict when it came to Yakumo's freedom of movement. He wanted to keep his niece isolated for her own safety and for the safety of the village. It had been difficult enough for Kurenai to convince him to let her take Yakumo out into the village. It would be even harder to convince him to let Yakumo make friends. Alright, so we don't go to your uncle for this, Kurenai said. She picked up her cup and took a small sip from it. So, what other options did they have? Wander around the village and hope for a random encounter? No, that could take too long and raise suspicion. Maybe she could ask Itachi and see if he could set up a meeting. That could work. Unfortunately, the young man was out on a mission and would be gone for at least 2 weeks. Could Yakumo wait that long? Then a thought occurred to her. It was a long shot, but even if it didn't work, it would keep Yakumo occupied until Itachi got back. I've got an idea. Kurenai put her cup of coffee down. Yakumo had just taken a bit from her cold treat. She put the spoon down. Yes, what is it? She asked, sounding almost excited. Kurenai smiled, happy to see her young charge so energetic about something. Why not go back to the same forest clearing that you saw him in? The forest clearing? Yakumo parroted. You do remember where it is, right? Kurenai asked. Yakumo looked thoughtful for a moment. I think I do, she said. But why go there? You met the boy there once. It's possible that you'll see him again there, Kurenai explained. Admittedly, it was a long shot. But then again, so were the odds of meeting the boy in the first place, and Kurenai, in her experiences, had learned that the world tended to favor the long odds. You think he might be there? Yakumo asked nervously. Kurenai just shrugged her shoulders. It's no guarantee, but it is better than nothing. Go to this forest clearing and see if he's there for the next couple of weeks to see if he's there. In not, we'll think of something else. Yakumo thought about the Jonin's proposal for a few moments and slowly nodded. I try that. I'll sneak out of the compound whenever I can go the forest clearing. Then she fell silent. Again for a moment. Kurenai, what do I do if he is there? She nervously asked. For one, don't run away. Kurenai joked, but she stopped her teasing at seeing the girl's impassive response. Just introduce yourself and talk to him. Introduce myself? Kurenai nodded. Tell him your name and let him do the same. After that, see where it goes from there. Talk to him. Who knows, maybe you'll make a friend. A friend? Yakumo said. A friend. She repeated like the word was faint on her tongue. Yes, a friend. Kurenai ignored the aching feeling in her heart. This girl should be leading a normal life, she should have several friends at this age. Not cooped up in some old compound because of what she could do and the dangers that came with it. A friend. That would be nice. Yakumo said. Kurenai Zensei, do you have any friends? Many. Kurenai. I'll have to introduce you to them at some point. She made a mental note to keep Anko away from this girl. No need to expose her charge to corrupting influences. Trust me, they'll love you. What if he doesn't like it? Yakumo asked. What if he doesn't want to be my friend? What do I do then? Kurenai gave the girl an understanding smile. She reached out her hand, squeezed Yakumo's. Yakumo, you're going to be all right. This boy will love you and will want to be your friend. Just be yourself, let him get to know you. Even if he doesn't, then it's his loss. It doesn't mean that there was anything wrong with you. Kurenai was certain this boy would want to befriend Yakumo if he was who she thought he was. Yakumo looked like she was at a loss for words. Thank you, Kurenai Zensei. She said. No need to thank me, Yakumo-san. Kurenai replied. I'm your sensei, it is my job to help you. To make sure that you're able to grow both as a shinobi and as a person. In a way, that makes me your first friend, doesn't it? Kurenai had never put much thought into her relationship with Yakumo. But now that she was thinking about it, she viewed Yakumo as more than just a student under her tutelage. Much the same way she did with Hinata. I guess. Yakumo said uncertainly. Then, as your friend and sensei, I encourage you to meet this boy. Kurenai removed her hand and picked up her cup. Now then, how about we finish up here, and I'll take you for clothes shopping. Clothes shopping? Yakumo asked. Trust me, you'll love it. Konoha, forest clearing, Naruto. The next time you have an idea, I will ignore it. Sasuke thought to himself. He was standing in the same clearing he had found more than 2 weeks ago, standing at the very same hill where he first saw that girl. He had taken Naruto's advice, an action he was starting to regret now, and went back to the forest clearing the next day. Hoping to find the girl that had occupied his mind for so long. It took him a little bit to find the place the first day, as he didn't completely remember that path he took. When he did find it, he had half expected to find the girl there waiting for him. He never thought he would feel so disappointed at something when he saw the clearing was empty. But being the stubborn boy he was, he waited in the clearing for the girl to show up. Several thoughts plagued his mind as he waited. What if she doesn't show up? What if she doesn't remember where the clearing is? What if he scared her off completely? What if she did show up? What would he do then? It was nerve-inducing. Sasuke had never felt this way before. He had never been so nervous about meeting someone before, and at the same time so eager about it. He waited until the sun had set. He did the same the next day and the day after, with all the same thoughts and doubts plaguing him. Today would mark the 11th day he had started this routine. Now his nervousness had given way to frustration. 11 days he had followed his friend's advice, and 11 days he had found an empty forest clearing and waited there. Only to be met with more disappointment. His parents were starting to get worried about his recent lateness at getting home. He explained to them that he was just spending more time with his friends, but he knew they were starting to get suspicious. Well, they wouldn't have to worry about that for much longer. His patience was wearing thin now, and he was starting to suspect that the girl would never show up. And could he blame her? Meeting a total stranger in the middle of the forest was certain to scare anyone off from the place for a long time. If the roles had been reversed, Sasuke wouldn't have entertained the thought of returning for a long time. Which begged the question of what was he doing out here, knowing that the odds of the person he was waiting for would never show up? Oh, right, it's because I decided to listen to the ideas of a dumb blonde. The sun was setting now, marking the end of another fruitless day of waiting. The next time he saw Naruto, he would have words with him. Last time, I'll listen to anything you have to say, dope. He turned around, ready to leave the clearing perhaps for the last time. Then his eyes met with brown ones. A few moments earlier there were times when Yakumo really disliked her uncle. Don't get her wrong, she knew the man cared for her and was doing his best to look after her and keep her safe. She was grateful to the man for what he did after the passing of her parents. But there were times when she felt that her uncle could be overbearing when it came to her protection. For almost 2 weeks, the man kept a close eye on her, a result of her previous excursion into the forest. She couldn't do anywhere or do anything with her uncle knowing about it. Because of his watchful eye, Yakumo couldn't sneak off into the forest like Kurenai-sensei suggested. Yakumo tried to keep her frustration at bay. She had done this before and got similar results. Eventually, her uncle would relax, and she would have freedom of movement back. But as the week passed, her frustration grew. She couldn't help but feel that her chance to see that boy again would slip away. Today her patience had paid off. She had finally managed to sneak out of her clan's compound and made her way to Konoha Park and through the forest that surrounded it. But even now, the young Kurama girl felt a pang of nervousness well up inside her. What if the boy wasn't there? What if she had waited too long and she had missed her chance? What if he was there? There was so much she didn't know, causing the worry to eat away at her. The temptation to turn back and forget the whole thing. But no matter what, she stamped down that worry and pressed on. Her worry returned tenfold when she finally reached the clearing. Yakumo had reached the foot of the hill and had to cover her mouth to stifle a gasp. There he is, up on the hill close to where she had been painting. Excitement and worry twisted around her as she stood there staring at the back of the boy. Kurenai-sensei, you were right. He is here. The girl thought. Now, what do I do? Simple, you go and meet him. A voice said in the back of her mind. It was not the same voice that she was used to hearing. Strangely it sounded a lot like Kurenai-sensei. Yakumo took one step towards the boy. Then another and another. Fear and trepidation ate away at her. What if this was a mistake? What if the boy didn't like her? At the same time, she felt excited. What if Kurenai-sensei was right? What if this boy did become her first friend? What then? The sun was setting when she came to a stop behind the boy. Her hand reached out to the boy, then stopped. The urge to turn and run came crashing back into her, but her feet stayed rooted in place. Her desire to meet the boy blocked that urge, and with the two internal forces battling it out, she froze up. That was when the boy turned around, and everything seemed to stretch out into eternity. Sasuke didn't know what to do. He had just turned around plans of giving a certain blonde dope an earful about getting his hopes when he came face to face with the most beautiful girl he had ever met. The same girl he had seen over 2 weeks ago. Naruto, for once, seemed to have had a good idea. That thought mattered little, though, as Sasuke did not know what to do. He was face to face with the girl that had preoccupied a significant portion of his thoughts. And quite close to her, he noted with a flush. He couldn't just ignore her like he did with his fangirls, could he? At the same time, he lacks the strength to talk to her. Eternity seemed to stretch out in each passing second as the two children continued to stare at one another. Was the girl equally at a loss for words? Sasuke wondered. The Uchiha boy opened his mouth, finally finding some strength to talk. However, nothing came out, as no words came to mind. He closed his mouth, and then opened it again to say something, nothing. This repeated itself to Sasuke's growing frustration. Come on, Sasuke. Say something, anything. Sasuke internally shouted at himself. He said the first word that came to mind. Hi. Then internally slapped himself. Hi. Hi. You've been waiting for this for a whole week. Had literal hours to think over what you would say when you met this girl. And all you can say is, "Hi." A voice berated him. His voice. A part of him hoped that the girl would run away like she did last time. Anything to avoid the embarrassment he felt right now. The girl looked away from him, gazing at the ground. Her cheeks turned red. For a moment, Sasuke was worried that he had offended her somehow. He heard something come from her. "What?" Sasuke said. "Did you say something?" he asked the girl. The girl looks back at him, a shy look in her eye. It almost reminded him of Hinata. He thought it was cute. "Two said hi," she said quietly. "That is what you say when someone greets you, right?" Sasuke rubbed that back of his neck, feeling his cheeks warming up. "Yeah, I guess," he said. A moment later, the two were sitting on the edge of the hill. That awkward silence had returned between the two, as they struggled to say something. Sasuke wasn't about to let it continue. "Uchiha Sasuke." "What?" the girl said, looking at him. "My name," Sasuke clarified. "Uchiha Sasuke." "Oh." The girl responded, biting on her lip, her cheeks turned a shade of red. "I'm Kurama Yakumo." "Kurama?" Sasuke asked. That name sounded familiar to him. Now, where have I heard that name before? Sasuke racked his brain, trying to bring up whatever he knew about that name. Then he found the little nugget of information he was looking for. The Kurama clan, once one of the most prominent clans in Konoha, but has been on the decline since the Second Great Shinobi War. They were known for their genjutsu that were so powerful that their opponents were known to hurt themselves or die. If rumor were to be believed, some even could fool dojutsus like the Byakugan or the Sharingan. "I'm from the Kurama clan," Yakumo confirmed. "There, I know about the Kurama clan," Sasuke said, cutting her off. Then berated himself for being so rude. "Come on, dude." She was about to talk about her family. "Not everyone has strained relations like you do." Though now, come to think of it, Sasuke didn't remember visiting the Kurama clan compound or a member of the Kurama clan coming over the Uchiha compound. As the son of Fugaku, the head of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke as a young child, often had to go with his family to other clan compounds, or children of other clans, major and minor, come over to the Uchiha compound. Something about maintaining relations in the village. Sasuke was never a huge fan of politics, so he hardly paid attention. The Kurama clan, while on the decline, should still be considered a major clan of Konoha. So why had his family never visited them, or vice versa? Maybe they had, and he just couldn't remember it. "Oh," the girl said softly. The silence between them grew more awkward. Something Sasuke didn't think was possible. "Nice going, Sasuke. You just killed any chance of knowing this girl." Sasuke wished that a hole would just open beneath him and swallow him. Then Yakumo did something unexpected. She laughed. Sasuke blinked once, then twice. It was such an unexpected reaction that Sasuke was left at a loss for words. So not much different from before. Is something funny here? Was there some joke he missed? Sasuke wasn't an expert on humor, but he had been around Naruto long enough to get a general idea on what it was. With that in mind, he couldn't see what was so funny. "It's just kind of funny," the Kurama girl said between laughs. "I've spent nearly a week trying to get out of my clan's compound to come here. Hoping just to see you here. In that time, I was so afraid that you wouldn't be here. Or worse, you would be here. But now we're both here, and the only thing we can say to each is hi. Or introduce each other." Again, Sasuke blinked. Then he smirked. The girl had a point. He had been coming to this clearing hoping against all odds that he would see this girl again. Every time he waited, he would think of the conversations they would have. He thought about all the things he could say to the girl. He ran hundreds if not thousands of these imaginary conversations. But here he was now talking to this girl, and what could he say to her? Nothing, other than a little hi and an introduction. Sasuke began to laugh too. "I guess you're right," he said. From the sounds of it, we both were so wrapped up in wanting to see each other. Neither of us thought of what to say when we did. "Well, I kind of did," he admitted. "But I'm coming up short, now." Both kids stopped with their laughter and looked one another in the eye. Then started to giggle again. Is it weird that I feel relieved now? I spent so much time worrying about this, even losing some sleep over it. Now that we're here, all I can feel is relieved. Sasuke shook his head. Honestly, he felt the same way. This past week he felt a weight on his shoulders. Now he felt lighter. No, it's not. I came to this clearing every day for a week, and while I was here, I tried to think of things to say to you. I'm sure I had lots of things to say, but none of them are coming to mind. The Kurama girl smiled, something that seemed to make Sasuke's heart beat a little faster. I guess we both didn't plan on this. Not really, she said. Wait, you said you came here every day for a week? Sasuke felt his cheeks warm up. Yeah, I did. I was waiting for you to come, he said. I didn't know where else to find you. A friend of mine suggested that I should try to find you here. You know, where I first met you. Your friend suggested that? Kumo asked. Sasuke nodded. Yeah, he did. He's an idiot, but sometimes he does come up with good ideas. Good luck with getting him to admit that in front of Naruto. The blonde had big enough of an ego. Sasuke wasn't about to add to it. I'll have to introduce you to him sometime. Sasuke wasn't particularly good at this making friends thing. Naruto had this unnatural talent to make a friend out of anyone if given half the chance. Oh, Fat Hat would be nice, Kumo said shyly. Do you have many friends? She asked, playing with her hair. Not many, Sasuke said honestly. Naruto and Hinata were the only ones he considered to be his friends. Though the others like Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, and Ino could be considered his friends. But he wasn't as close to them as he was with the other two. That's nice, Kumo quietly said, almost to the point where Sasuke didn't hear her. But he did hear her. Her voice sounded so hollow, so alone. Could it be possible this girl didn't have any friends at all? A part of Sasuke didn't want to believe that. A girl as pretty as Kumo should be attracting lots of friends, hell he had been drawn to her, and that should count for something. But looking at her face, he just how lonely this girl was. Now more than ever, Sasuke was determined to become this girl's friend, possibly her first friend. He would also find a way to introduce her to the others, anything to help her feel less lonely in this world. My sensei made the same suggestion, Kumo said after a moment. Sensei? Wait, are you genin already? He asked, feeling a little envious of the girl. What? No, Kumo said, shaking her head and hands. I'm nowhere near ready to be a shinobi. She just helps me with learning to control my abilities. Oh, Sasuke said, understanding what the girl meant. Sorry if I assumed anything. Is she someone from your clan? It couldn't be one of her parents. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said sensei. Maybe an uncle or cousin. Again, Kumo shook her head. No, she's from outside the clan. Sasuke felt his eyebrows raise. That was unusual. Most clans didn't trust outsiders to teach their children unless they were from the academy or an allied clan. Don't members of your clan teach about your abilities? When the girl said abilities, he figured she meant her clan's Kekkei Genkai. They do. Yakumo said. But they felt that my sensei could help. For some reason, that set off a red flag in Sasuke's mind. Why would they believe that an outsider could help Yakumo control her abilities? Wouldn't they know more about that than anyone else? Sasuke was about to ask her when he saw the pensive expression on her face. He realized this was a topic that she wasn't comfortable discussing. Sasuke decided it was best to shelve this discussion for a later date. When Yakumo was more comfortable around him, he would ask. So, you said that your sensei made the same suggestion as my friend? Yakumo nodded. She noticed that I was distracted in my training. So, when I told her about our encounter, she suggested that I visit this place again. See if you would be here. That was much the same logic that Naruto had. Thinking about it now, Sasuke just how much of a long shot both of their respective plans were. They both hinged on the possibility that the other would be here in this clearing. Sure, they both met today, but Yakumo seemed to have less opportunity to come here than Sasuke did. If he had been just a little less patient or she just a little slower getting here, they might have never met today. It wasn't easy getting here. Yakumo admitted. My uncle saw to that. How so? Sasuke asked. Yakumo bit the bottom of her lip. Sasuke realized he had brought up another uncomfortable topic for the girl. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. He said hastily. No, it's okay. Yakumo said. The Kurama looked up into the night sky with a faint smile. If you're willing, I'll tell you about it. Sasuke slowly nodded. Sure. He said. He wanted to learn more about Yakumo, and he felt like this was a good chance. Bear in mind my uncle is a good man. She began. He tries to do what is best for me and my clan. Kurenai had a faint smile over her lips, as she watched the two children talk to each other. She couldn't make out what they were saying. But she felt that was for the best. She was already intruding on what should be a private moment by spying on them. She almost jumped and a familiar voice spoke from behind her. They look cute together, don't they? Without tearing her eyes away from the children, Kurenai responded to the voice. They do. I thought you wouldn't be back for another week. Itachi moved to a tree branch next to hers. I managed to conclude my mission quicker than expected. I had just completed my report when I saw you following that girl. Curiosity got the better of me, and I followed you here. Well, that was a scary thought. I'm glad you're not an enemy Nin. She commented. Curiosity also got the better of me. When I saw my student sneaking out of her clan's compound, I followed her here to this clearing. I see. Itachi looked over at his brother and Yakumo sitting together on the hill. That explains things. He mutters. Pardon? Before I left, I noticed that my little brother was distracted with something. Itachi explained. He was oddly closed-lipped about it. Now it seems I have my answer. The young man had a wistful expression on his face. My brother is growing into fine a young man. It feels only just yesterday that he was a baby trying to crawl up my leg. The next thing I'll know he'll be a man. Kurenai smiled. I heard that children grow up quickly. They do. Itachi said. When I have my own, I plan to cherish every moment I'll have with them. Kurenai nodded Quilty. Hearing it from Itachi, the Genjutsu mistress realized she would do the same if she ever had a child. That's the Kurama girl, isn't it? Yakumo, if I remember right. Kurenai stiffened at the passing comment. Yes, she is. She's my student. She stressed that last part, hoping that Itachi would get the underline. Message. What do you know? Itachi cut her off. I know of her condition. Kurenai's eyes narrowed at the Uchiha. You're not planning something, are you? Kurenai did not care if Itachi was a captain in ANBU or that he was a prodigy of unrivaled talent. She wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, impede her students' happiness. Itachi held up his hand to placate her. "Do not worry. I won't do anything to harm the girl. You have my word." Kurenai let out a relieved sigh. "I apologize." Looking back at her student, she noticed how tired both children looked. Their conversation would not last much longer. "I'm just trying to look out for my student. No need to apologize." Itachi responded. "You were concerned for the girl, just I am for my brother. But I believe that this will be good for the both of them. Try telling that to her uncle." Kurenai said more bitterly than she thought she was capable of. "Some may believe that others will only serve to drag them down." Itachi said. "But we of Konohagakure know better. Having loved ones can strengthen one's resolve. Tell that her uncle. Kurenai may do just that. No matter what, she would see to it that Yakumo would have a happy life. Her uncle be damned." Unknown location. Did our client really have to meet us out in a dark, dank cave? Daichi rolled his eyes at the complaints of his subordinate. "Be silent, Toma. Our client told us to meet in this cave. So, we're meeting him here. But we've been waiting here for hours," the tall, muscular man said. "If they wanted to meet us here, then they at the very least should have been here on time. Our client never gave us a specific time, only that we meet here on this day." Sana said, a normally quiet man. Toma growled. "Daichi-san, are you sure this job is legit?" he asked. "It better be." Daichi responded. Like Toma, he had grown impatient while waiting for their client. He hated for his time to be wasted, and he had killed for lesser insults. He supposes it could be worse. This meeting could have turned out to be a trap. The only reason they had stayed this long was because of how much money they could get from the job. "How much are they going to pay us for this job?" Toma asked. "That is assuming they even show up." Daichi cracked a smile. "Enough to begin funding our revolution." His hand unconsciously went to the hitayat wrapped around his arm. Fingers glided across the symbol for IWA. If all went to plan, IWA would soon have a new Iwakage, and their enemies would be made to pay for their crimes. Then our client had better be here soon. Toma began. Otherwise, you'll do what?" A voice cut through the ambient noise of the cave. Daichi felt his whole body stiffen. He spun around, looking for the source of the voice. His eyes landed on a figure hidden by the shadows of the cave. The missing nin reached for his weapons and felt that his companions were doing the same. The figure didn't react beyond the narrowing of their eyes. "Who are you?" This wasn't right. Daichi was a Jonin-level shinobi. For someone to sneak up on him this easily did not bode well for them. "Shouldn't it be obvious?" The figure responded with a hint of scorn in his voice. "You're our client." Daichi answered. He kept his hands hovering over his weapons. At first, he thought their client would be a civilian, probably some rich nobleman or governor who wanted an off-the-books mission. Now he realized they were being hired by another shinobi. That could complicate things. "Ah, so you do have some intelligence." The figure mocked. "Good." The missing nin suppresses a growl. He had to remind himself this was their client and to upset them in any way was not a good idea. Especially given the possibility that they could kill him and his companions with relative ease. "So, what is this job you have for us?" Daichi asked. His eyes quickly scanned over the cave, creating plans of escape should things turn sour for him. "Down to business." The figure responded. "I like that. This job should be easy for a man of your talents." The man produced a folder from his cloak. "Let's just say that there is a special package I need you to collect." The details are in this folder, along with a list of contacts that will help you on this mission. The figure tossed the folder to Daichi. The missing nin caught it easily and opened it up. Scanning through its contents, Daichi noted that this special package was in Konoha. The man cracked a small smile, a chance to strike at those tree huggers. Now that was something he wouldn't pass up. He closed the folder. Before we accept this mission, I want to see proof of payment, he said. For a moment, he could have sworn he saw the figure smile. Once more, you prove your intelligence, the figure said, tossing a large bag. It landed at Daichi's feet. Careful not to take his eyes off the figure, he stepped down and picked up the bag. Standing back, he opened it to see it was full of gold coins. He took one out to inspect it. It looked real enough to him. But as a shinobi, he knew appearances were deceiving. He held one of his hands up and formed a sign. Kai, he muttered, sending out a pulse of chakra. The coin remained unchanged. Fully satisfied now, Daichi put the coin back in the bag and sealed it. He hands to Sana. That is a third of the payment I will give to you, should you succeed in your mission, the figure said. Now then, any questions? Only one, Daichi said. When do you want us to leave? As soon as possible. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.